Chapter 2178. Lan Yunxiao and Di Beichun also received a huge shock. This kind of situation was simply unheard of. "I can't take it on." Blood-curdling screams kept coming out of Mu Jin's mouth. In this kind of situation, she really felt that death was better than living. When Bailey Hongzhuang saw Mu Jin's state, she hastily said, "Grandfather, hold grandmother down. You absolutely can't let her seek death." This kind of pain was clearly not something Mu Jin's could endure. She already wanted to die. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Situ Yin immediately reacted. He absolutely couldn't let Mu Jin's die like this. In the next instant, Situ Yin tightly hugged Mu Jin's, preventing her from seeking death. Mu Jin's consciousness had already been obliterated by the pain. She didn't know who was hugging her. She could only frantically struggle, wanting to end her own life. Bailey Hongzhuang swiftly grabbed Mu Jin's hand. She had to understand Mu Jin's current situation. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had guessed, this dark transformation had already spread to Mu Jin's body. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before Mu Jin's completely lost her life. When Lan Yunxiao and the rest saw Mu Jin's like this, they didn't know what to say. Even if Mu Jin's had stolen Yu Siqing's sweetheart, Yu Siqing's actions were too vicious. Normal people wouldn't be able to do such a cruel thing. Bailey Hongzhuang swiftly took out silver needles and pierced them into Mu Jin's acupuncture points. Miserable screams spread throughout the bedchamber. Di Beichun, Lan Yunxiao, and Mu Lingbing were all helping Bailey Hongzhuang to hold down Mu Jin's body, preventing her from struggling. Seeing Mu Jin's in such pain, their hearts were bleeding. However, they couldn't accept Mu Jin's leaving them like this. When Bailey Hongzhuang finished her acupuncture, the struggling Mu Jin's finally calmed down. However, she had already fainted. "Yishuan, what's going on?" Mu Lingbing hastily asked. Situ Yin and the rest focused their gazes on Bailey Hongzhuang. They never thought that Mu Jin's condition would be this serious. Bailey Hongzhuang told Situ Yin and the rest her previous judgment. Now that things had developed to this stage, there was no point in hiding it. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. "Right now, I'm only using acupuncture to temporarily control the spread of the poison. But this is only a delaying tactic. Of course, if we can't find a solution within this period of time, grandmother is very likely to die." Calm. Of the bedchamber, everyone stared blankly at the unconscious Mu Jin Sei. They were unable to accept such an outcome. Si Tuyin hugged Mu Jin Sei tightly. After waiting for so many years, he finally got to see Mu Jin Sei again. How could he watch her leave him like this? "Yishuan, is there no other way?" Mu Lingbing's face was ashen. She looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with a glimmer of hope. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. Not at the moment. She turned to look at Mu Jin's. She never thought that the poison would be so terrifying. But at that moment, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly noticed a faint red light between Mu Jin's eyebrows. Chapter 2179. Could it be? Bailey Hongzhuang's clear eyes flashed with shock. She had never thought of this possibility before, but from Mu Jin's current situation, there was only one possibility. Si Tiyin and the rest looked at Mu Jin's with worry, their hearts in a mess. At this moment, when they suddenly heard Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's eyes fell on her. "Yishuan, do you know something?" Mu Lingbing quickly grabbed Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, her face filled with anxiety. "Gu poison." Bailey Hongzhuang muttered these two words, but it made Si Tiyin and the rest's expressions change. "Gu poison?" Si Tiyin looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock. Gu poison was rarely seen, and it was sinister and vicious. Just hearing its name was enough to make people shrink back. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I just saw a trace of gu poison in grandmother's forehead. It had never appeared before, so I didn't think in that direction." For the past few days, Bailey Hongzhuang had always thought that Mu Jin's current state was caused by poison. However, she couldn't find any poison that matched Mu Jin's condition. Now that she linked it to gu poison, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but come to a realization. If it was gu poison, then everything made sense. Gu poison is a sinister move that has long been banned. Back then, the witchcraft clan was directly exterminated. It's been many years since goo poison appeared in the Shangxian continent. Lan Yinxiao said with a solemn expression. The goo poison was too insidious, and its methods were extremely cruel. Back then, the witchcraft clan committed crimes in the Shangxian continent and was exterminated. Since then, goo poison had disappeared from everyone's sight. They never thought that Yusiching would poison Mu Jin's, but now that they thought about it, they felt that other than goo poison, there was nothing else that could cause Mu Jin's to be in such pain. Hong Zhuang, if it's goo poison, then do you have a way to cure it? Si Tian and the rest's expressions turned ugly. Goo poison had disappeared for too many years. So many doctors didn't have much understanding of it. They only had a few records in ancient books. Based on those records alone, it was obviously impossible to cure the goo poison. Moreover, Bailey Hong Zhuang was so young, so she probably hadn't come into contact with goo poison. At this moment, it wasn't easy to determine that Mu Jin's had been poisoned, let alone cure it. Bewitching's gaze focused on Bailey Hong Zhuang. He knew that Bailey Hong Zhuang was special, but he didn't know if Bailey Hong Zhuang had any understanding of this. Let's see what kind of goo poison it is. Bailey Hong Zhuang's eyes darkened, but she didn't say anything else. There were many kinds where there are different kinds of goo poison. In her previous life, when she was still alive, the goo poison was a very frightening poison. The witchcraft clan could always use goo poison to control others or make people die without knowing why, without leaving a trace. After she transmigrated, she found out that the witchcraft clan had been exterminated, so she never thought about this. She didn't expect Yusiching to be able to do this. She had underestimated Yusiching. Bailey Hong Zhuang sat by Mu Jin's side and put away her silver needles. Chapter 2180. Following that, Bailey Hong Zhuang pierced the silver needles into different acupuncture points on Mu Jin's body. Si Tu Yin and the rest quietly watched Bailey Hong Zhuang's actions. They didn't know what Bailey Hong Zhuang was going to do. After Bailey Hong Zhuang pierced the silver needles into Mu Jin's acupuncture points, the silver needles started to vibrate. Seeing this scene, a wisp of surprise appeared in everyone's eyes. However, Si Tu Yin and the rest were all experienced and knowledgeable people, so they quickly knew that Bailey Hong Zhuang was using the vibrating needle technique. In that instant, they completely understood the power of Bailey Hong Zhuang's medical skills. Previously, they might not have had a direct understanding of this, but now, they completely understood. With the trembling of these silver needles, Bailey Hong Zhuang's forehead was also oozing fine beads of sweat. In the next moment, under everyone's shocked and astonished gazes, they saw Mu Jin's body start to move. In her meridians, there was a protruding thing that kept moving forward. Seeing this, everyone immediately knew that this was a goo worm. In the past, everyone had only heard of goo worms, but seeing it with their own eyes was still extremely shocking. This thing had actually been hiding in Mu Jin's body for so many years. At this moment, Bailey Hong Zhuang also confirmed her judgment. This was a goo worm. Under the pressure of Bailey Hong Zhuang's silver needles, the goo worm arrived at Mu Jin's wrist. Hong Zhuang, can this drive the goo worm out? Si Tu Yin hurriedly asked. Hearing this, Bailey Hong Zhuang shook her head. No, I'm only forcing the goo worm's form out. After understanding it, I can think of a solution. Goo poisons are extremely complicated, and Yusiching is sinister and vicious. Who knows, this goo worm might even have a mother worm. If that's really the case, then Yusiching has been relying on this to control grandmother's life and death. Hearing Bailey Hong Zhuang's explanation, everyone's faces turned ugly. They simply couldn't imagine that Yusiching was actually so vicious. The goo worm had been moving around Mu Jin's wrist. This goo worm had been living in Mu Jin's body for too long and was almost the size of a fist. At this moment, it was like a tumor. Bailey Hong Zhuang took out her silver needles. She was only using this method to force the goo worm to this place. But once she cut Mu Jin's hand, the goo worm wouldn't come out. Instead, it would quickly hide inside Mu Jin's body. If she wanted to find it again, it would take a lot of effort. Bailey Hongzhuang stabbed the goo worm. She had to extract some of the goo worm's body fluids. Only then would she be able to find out what kind of substances could restrain the goo worm's bodies was. Si-Tu Yin and the rest looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's actions. They, who didn't know anything about medicine, could only place their hopes on Bailey Hongzhuang. As Bailey Hongzhuang's silver needles pierced into the goo worm's body, the goo worm immediately started to struggle. It twisted and turned, wanting to leave this place. After extracting some of the goo worm's body fluid, Bailey Hongzhuang then kept her silver needles. When Bailey Hongzhuang kept the silver needles in Mu Jinsei's body one by one, the goo worm disappeared into nothingness under everyone's shocked gazes. It merged into Mu Jinsei's body as if it had never appeared. Chapter 2181. Yixuan, how is your grandmother now? Mu Lingbing asked anxiously. Bailey Hongzhuang lowered her head to look at the unconscious Mu Jinsei. Her expression was also filled with worry as she said, I've already temporarily controlled the goo poison in grandmother's body. She's just fainted from exhaustion. Once she wakes up, she'll be fine for now. However, that goo worm has been absorbing nutrients from grandmother's body all these years. Take good care of grandmother. I'll go study this goo worm. All right. Everyone nodded. None of them expected Mu Jinsei's condition to be this bad. In comparison, if Mu Jinsei was only disfigured, then it wasn't that serious. But now, they really didn't know what to do. Si-Tu Yin looked at Mu Jinsei with heartache. His stupidity had caused Mu Jinsei to fall to this state. When he saw Mu Jinsei struggling like she was better off dead, his heart ached to the extreme. He slowly carried Mu Jinsei to the bed. He was so careful that it was as if he was carrying a rare treasure. Even though Mu Jinsei's skin had become like this, he could still recognize that the person in front of him was the Mu Jinsei he had been thinking about day and night. Everyone's expression changed when they saw Si-Tu Yan's expression. They already knew about Si-Tu Yan's feelings for Mu Jinsei. Now that they saw it, their feelings deepened. In reality, no matter who saw Mu Jinsei's current appearance, they would be extremely shocked and even terrified. Even though Lan Yunxiao and Di Beichen were prepared, they still found it hard to accept when they first saw it. However, Si-Tu Yin used his actions to tell them what true feelings were. When Mu Lingbing saw this scene, her heart was comforted. These days, she and Mu Jinsei had talked about many things. Mu Jinsei was filled with hatred towards Si-Tu Yin. Back then, when Mu Jinsei left by herself, she was even more worried than before. However, after Yusiqing hurt Mu Lingbing and Bailey Hongzhuang, Mu Jinsei's feelings towards Si-Tu Yin had turned into hatred. Because of Si-Tu Yan's mistake, she had hurt the people she cared about the most. This was something she couldn't accept. Now, Mu Lingbing only hoped that Mu Jinsei would recover quickly. She believed that as long as Mu Jinsei knew what Si-Tu Yin had done all these years, she would definitely forgive him. Mu Lingbing, Lan Yunxiao, and Di Beichen exchanged glances before leaving the room. At this time, it was enough for Si-Tu Yin to take care of Mu Jinsei. Right now, Si-Tu Yin only had the opportunity to take care of Mu Jinsei while she was unconscious. After Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the house, she began to research. She had been puzzled before, but now she finally found a direction. After understanding what it was, at least he had a target to study. When Mu Lingbing and the other two returned, they saw Bailey Hongzhuang's tightly shut door. They wanted to know more about the poison. However, this was not the time to disturb Bailey Hongzhuang. Thinking about it, Bailey Hongzhuang was more anxious than them. In the next few days, Di Beichen only sent food to Bailey Hongzhuang's house regularly. At other times, they didn't see Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2182. Si-Tu Yin had been taking care of Mu Jinsei the entire time. This time, Mu Jinsei had been unconscious for a long time, but her body's condition was very stable. Because the goo worm was affecting Mu Jinsei's insides this time, the deficit was even more alarming. 5 days later, Mu Jinsei slowly woke up. When Si-Tu Yin saw that Mu Jinsei was showing signs of waking up, he quickly left the palace and left Mu Lingbing to take care of Mu Jinsei. Mu Jinsei's body was already extremely weak. If she saw him, she would probably go even more hysterical. He couldn't take such a risk and let Mu Jinsei's condition worsen. When Mu Jinsei woke up, she saw a familiar figure disappear from her sight. But when the thought of it being C2 Yin appeared in her mind, even she found it laughable. She had actually dreamed of the man who had ruined her life. What a joke. Mother, how are you feeling? Mu Lingbing couldn't help but rejoice when she saw that Mu Jinsei had woken up. Mu Jinsei hadn't woken up for several days, and she had been worried to death. Mu Jinsei's face was pale as she shook her head. What happened to me afterwards? Mu Lingbing poured a cup of water for Mu Jinsei before telling her what had happened that day. Of course, she didn't mention C2 Yin and the others. You're saying that I've been poisoned by a goo worm? Mu Jinsei's eyes were filled with shock. She had never thought that she had been poisoned by such a terrifying goo worm. That's right. Hong Zhuang used silver needles to force the goo worm out of your body. That's how we saw the goo worm's existence. However, it's not an easy task to force the goo worm out of the body. Hong Zhuang has been trying to think of a way recently. Mu Lingbing slowly explained. Yu Siqing actually used the goo worm on me. Mu Jinsei's voice was filled with disbelief. She had never thought that this would be the result. No wonder so many doctors had never seen this kind of symptoms. Goo worm was something that had disappeared for many years. It looked like Yu Siqing had really gone to great lengths to torment her. She had even managed to find such a thing. I didn't think that Yi Xian could even diagnose a goo worm. Truly incredible. Mu Jinsei couldn't help sighing. Previously, Hong Zhuang had already healed her legs, which made her extremely surprised. Although the way she walked was still somewhat unchanged. As long as she was given a little more time, she would be able to completely recover. She couldn't help but marvel at Bailey Hong Zhuang's medical skills. Back then, so many doctors came, but none of them could cure her legs. Just this point alone was enough to prove it. She had been poisoned by goo. Other doctors were unable to tell, but Bailey Hong Zhuang was able to tell. It was really amazing. My goo poison was suppressed by Yi Xian? Mu Jinsei asked. Mu Lingbing nodded slightly. Yi Xuan has only temporarily suppressed the outbreak of the goo poison. She said she wants to use this time to find a solution. Hearing this, Mu Jinsei's expression changed a little. Although Mu Lingbing had only said this much, she already understood. In the past, when the goo poison acted up, although the pain was unbearable, it was far less intense and terrifying than this time. If Bailey Hong Zhuang couldn't find a solution in this time, then she wouldn't have long to live. This wasn't something she wanted to see, but to be able to see Mu Lingbing and Lan Yixuan in this lifetime was already a blessing to her. Chapter 2183. Lingbing, tell Yixuan not to feel too much pressure. To be able to see all of you return safely while I'm still alive is already the greatest blessing I've ever had. Mu Jin stared at Mu Lingbing's familiar face and reached out to hold the latter's hand. No matter what, at least when her life was about to end, she would not be alone. If one were to say that she hated C2 Yin to the core, then there was only one thing she was grateful for. Because without C2 Yin, she would not have been able to have Mu Lingbing and Lan Yixuan. To her, this was enough. Her life in this world had not been in vain. Hearing Mu Jin's pessimistic words, Mu Lingbing's eyes darkened and her lips trembled. She did not wish for Mu Jin's to give up hope like this, but the goo poison was too powerful and she could not guarantee that she would be able to get rid of it. Over the past few days, Bailey Hong Zhuang had been immersed in her research and had not rested at all. Seeing Bailey Hong Zhuang in this state, she could not help but feel her heart ache. In the long run, Bailey Hong Zhuang's body would not be able to take it. But now, Mu Jin's life was at stake, and she had no way of stopping Bailey Hong Zhuang. All of them were in this state of mind, and their emotions were extremely complicated. Originally, they had wanted to capture Yu Siqing alive. Perhaps after capturing her, they would be able to save Mu Jin's. However, Bailey Hong Zhuang and C2 Yin had told them the truth, and they had given up on this plan. There must be a mother worm in Mu Jin's body, and this mother worm must be in Yu Siqing's hands. Based on Yu Siqing's deranged behavior, she would not give them the chance to save Mu Jin's. Perhaps to Yu Siqing herself, she did not fear death. She had been no different from a zombie these days, and she only wanted to see everyone suffer. Once they went to find Yu Siqing, she would definitely take Mu Jin's life. This would only make things worse. C2 Yin nodded in agreement after hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's analysis. He had interacted with Yu Siqing for so many years and understood her very well. Bailey Hongzhuang researched day and night, and in the process of this research, Bailey Hongzhuang also had some gains. This goo worm lived on trees, so Mu Jinsei's skin had the appearance of tree bark. It sucked the nutrients from Mu Jinsei's body while secreting the components of the tree. Under this imperceptible influence, Mu Jin's would become a dead tree in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang had high attainments in medical skills. As long as she was given enough time, she would be able to decipher everything. Now, what she needed to do was to develop a drug that could stop the goo worm from continuing to grow and suppress its secretion in Mu Jinsei's body. Moreover, she wanted to completely sever the connection between the mother insect and the child insect without the mother insect knowing. Once the connection was broken, it had to be completed in an extremely short period of time. Otherwise, once Yu Siqing discovered that something was wrong with the mother insect, she would immediately give the order to the mother insect and let the child insect take Mu Jin's life in an instant. Bailey Hongzhuang had interacted with the witchcraft clan in her past life, so she was very clear about their methods. Now, the most important thing was to understand what ingredients could suppress the growth of the child insect. Chapter 2184. Although Bailey Hongzhuang was worried about Mu Jinsei's condition, Bailey Hongzhuang did not lose her cool because of this. On the contrary, in the eyes of others, Bailey Hongzhuang was terrifyingly calm. Nothing could affect her, and all her thoughts were focused on developing a solution. The three beasts had always been by Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's serious and determined look, they could only hope that their mistress's body would be able to hold on. Their mistress did not hide anything from them. Even if their mistress had already thought of a way to stop the childworm's movements, she could only delay it for half a month. If their mistress could not find a solution in this half a month, then Mu Jinsei would die. It was because of this that their mistress was so restless. They were very clear in their hearts that if their mistress were to watch someone she cared about die like this, she would definitely not be able to bear it. After all, their mistress had studied medicine for so long and had saved countless people, but she was unable to save her own loved ones. This kind of pain was the hardest to bear. After Gu Jinghe saw Bailey Hongzhuang heal Mu Jinsei's legs, she was also shocked by Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang had such abilities at such a young age. In a few more years, she would definitely be a world-renowned genius doctor. Yu Siqing was able to enjoy such a reputation because of her outstanding medical skills. She could be said to be the Yu family's #1 doctor in all these years. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was not even 20 years old yet and was already able to do this. This was something that Yu Siqing could not compare to at that time. These days, no matter what Bailey Hongzhuang needed, Gu Jinghe would always be the first to prepare it. As long as they could save Mu Jinsei, Sun Moon Palace would definitely do their best. And it was with Gu Jinghe's help that Bailey Hongzhuang's progress was very fast. On this day, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was researching, Mu Lingbing suddenly knocked on Bailey Hongzhuang's door, unable to hide the panic on her face. "Yishuan, your grandmother is unconscious." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately stood up. Her serious face did not show any surprise. "I'll go take a look." Mu Lingbing nodded and walked towards the sleeping quarters with Bailey Hongzhuang. Situ Yin had not appeared in front of Mu Jinsei for the past few days. Now that he knew that Mu Jinsei had fainted again, his heart was burning with anxiety. He immediately followed her to the palace. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the others arrived at the palace, they saw Mu Jinsei lying unconscious on the bed. Bailey Hongzhuang pulled Mu Jinsei's hand, and after taking her pulse, her face sank. Sure enough, such a situation still happened, Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's face that suddenly turned ugly, and their hearts couldn't help but sink. "Hongzhuang, how is Jean say?" Situ Yin asked. "Although I managed to stop the child worms from flaring up earlier, I couldn't hold on for long. Now that my methods are gradually losing effectiveness, the child worms are constantly resisting. Once they succeed in resisting, then—" Bailey Hongzhuang didn't say the following words, but everyone already understood. Once the child worms succeeded in resisting, Mu Jinsei would die an extremely painful death. Situ Yin clenched his fists tightly, his face ugly. An indescribable anger surged in his chest, mixed with an indescribable heartache. Chapter 2185. Is there no other way now? Situ Yin suppressed the pain in his heart and looked towards Bailey Hongzhuang. When Mu Jinsei was in such pain, he was powerless to do anything. He couldn't put this feeling into words. Mu Lingbing and the others looked towards Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang was their only hope. However, they knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had already done her best. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed, her expression serious. Based on grandmother's current condition, she can only hold on for 3 more days. I've already come up with a few ideas, but I still need some time to prepare them. If they're effective, then grandmother still has a glimmer of hope. Over the past few days, Bailey Hongzhuang had tried many ways to deal with the parasites. However, these things were simply too rare. Those who had never seen them before had no idea what to do. So, she could only keep trying. In this continuous trial and error, he finally found some things that had a certain effect. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone's eyes brightened. As long as there was a glimmer of hope, then it was good. Grandfather, mother, take good care of grandmother. If the parasites begin to move, inform me immediately. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was solemn. She could only give it her all. Yishuan, don't worry. Leave this to us. Mu Lingbing hurriedly said. We only have 3 days. I'll make it in 3 days. Bailey Hongzhuang turned to look at Gu Jinghe. First Elder, there are many materials that I'll need your help with. Don't worry. No matter what the materials are, I'll find a way to get them. Gu Jinghe's heart ached when she saw Mu Jinsei's condition. She hadn't seen the Palace Lord for so many years. She hadn't thought that the Palace Lord's condition would be so serious. No matter what it was, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, the Sun Moon Palace wouldn't be stingy. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly, then quickly left the bedroom and returned to her room. Originally, she only had a vague idea, but she wasn't sure what the final result would be. If she had enough time, she would be able to configure it and test it out, but judging from the current situation, it was obvious that she had no chance. She could only give it her all. This was her last hope. Bewitching followed closely behind Bailey Hongzhuang and left. These days, Hongzhuang had been under too much pressure, and his heart ached for her. However, just like Mu Lingbing and the others, he couldn't bring himself to ask Bailey Hongzhuang to rest. Now that there were only 3 days left, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely do her best. He could only silently watch over Bailey Hongzhuang and wait for the dust to settle before letting Hongzhuang have a good rest. Recently, Bailey Hongzhuang's meals had been prepared by him. He had already added a lot of nutrients to it, so that Hongzhuang wouldn't be so tired. However, it wouldn't do for her to not rest for so many days. Once these 3 days were over, he would definitely let Hongzhuang have a good rest. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to her room and quickly began to configure the ingredients. She told Gu Jinghe all the ingredients she needed. Chapter 2186. Tian, Mu Lingbing, and the rest waited anxiously. With each passing day, they could sense that Mu Jin's condition was worsening. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang had said, she could only hold on for 3 more days. Everyone was burning with anxiety, but when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang in this state, they couldn't help but worry. Every minute and every second was torturous. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Tian had been guarding Mu Jin's by her bedside the entire time. He suddenly noticed that Mu Jin's body had begun to tremble. Her brows were tightly knitted together, clearly in great pain. Noticing this, CTN immediately understood that the goo poison in Mu Jin's body was about to flare up. Thus, he immediately sent Mu Lingbing to inform Bailey Hongzhuang. Just as Mu Lingbing rushed over to inform Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of her room with a bowl of medicine in her hands. Di Beichen and Lan Yunxiao had been guarding outside Bailey Hongzhuang's room for the past 3 days. When they saw Bailey Hongzhuang walk out, they immediately went to welcome her. Yixuan, this is... Lan Yunxiao immediately noticed the bowl of medicine in Bailey Hongzhuang's hands and couldn't help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang had been concocting the antidote these past few days. Now that she suddenly brought out a bowl of medicine, could it be that she'd found a solution? Let grandmother try this bowl of medicine. Perhaps it can suppress the parasites. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone was shaken. Then let's go to the sleeping quarters immediately. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 3 was about to set off, Mu Lingbing quickly ran over. Mother, grandmother's goo poison is flaring up. Without waiting for Mu Lingbing to speak, Bailey Hongzhuang spoke first. Mu Lingbing quickly nodded. It's almost uncontrollable. There's no time to lose. Let's hurry over. When Mu Lingbing saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had already prepared the medicine, she was overjoyed. Everyone hurried to the sleeping quarters. When everyone arrived at the bedchamber, Mu Jinsei's body was already twitching. She was in extreme pain. C2 Yin covered his face, worried that Mu Jinsei would see his appearance. However, with the current situation, Mu Jinsei clearly did not notice C2 Yin. This kind of intense pain was the same as the one he had experienced a few days ago. It was so painful that he wished he could just take his own life. Mu Jinsei couldn't help but roll on the ground as blood spurted out from her mouth. She felt her body burning, as if she was about to be incinerated. Seeing Mu Jinsei like this, everyone was shocked. This goo poison was too terrifying when it flared up. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly stepped forward and said to CT Yin and the others, "Hold down Grandma's body and don't let her move." CT Yin and the others immediately restrained Mu Jinsei's body. Mu Jinsei struggled violently, but under the intense pain, she didn't have much strength. Now that she was restrained by C2 Yin and the others, she couldn't move at all. Bailey Hongzhuang quickly applied the needles, trying to use this method to alleviate Mu Jinsei's pain. The silver needles kept vibrating, and Bailey Hongzhuang's pale face was covered in sweat. This time, it was even more difficult to contain the pain. Finally, under Bailey Hongzhuang's control, Mu Jinsei's condition stabilized. Chapter 2187. Everyone's gaze focused on Mu Jin's body. When the goo poison had flared up, a red light had flashed between Mu Jin's brows. That was the sign that the goo poison had flared up. Just as everyone's attention was on Mu Jin's, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. PFFF, Bailey Hongzhuang's already pale face turned even paler. When everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had suddenly spat out blood, they panicked. Yixuan, what's wrong? Mu Lingbing hurriedly walked over to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, her eyes filled with worry. Everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang worriedly. Over the past few days, the one who had suffered the most was Bailey Hongzhuang. She had been researching day and night and had not closed her eyes at all. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was not weak, but she was not made of iron. From Bailey Hongzhuang's increasingly pale face, they could see that she had been holding on bitterly. Now, she could not hold on any longer. Bailey Hongzhuang waved her hand slightly and said, "I'm fine." But Bailey Hongzhuang's voice was unusually weak. She had expended too much energy over the past few days. She was already at the end of her rope, and adding on the mental strength she had expended earlier on, she could not take it anymore. Yixuan, hurry and rest. Mu Lingbing's heart ached. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been very filial. In order to save Mu Jin's, she had almost given up her own life. Now that Hongzhuang had already done so much, they could only resign themselves to fate. They could not let Hongzhuang fall into danger. Hongzhuang, hurry and rest. Di Beichen's heart ached. Hongzhuang had always been too strong. All the pressure had been placed on her alone. He had no way to share it even if he wanted to. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head and said, I can still hold on. Let's see how the outer skin is doing first. Everyone saw that Bailey Hongzhuang was so determined and thought about Mu Jin's situation. None of them had any ideas and could only wait a little longer. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on the red light in between Mu Jin's brows. Although she was going all out this time, she still had a certain amount of confidence in her antidote. The ingredients in the antidote could effectively suppress the development of the childworms. As long as it was successful, she would only need to put in a little more effort, and everything would be resolved. But the effects would depend on the situation. A moment later, Bailey Hongzhuang saw that Mu Jinsei's breathing had stabilized a bit, and the red light between her eyebrows had also gradually dimmed. A happy smile appeared on her face. Success. This antidote can restrain the childworms. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone was overjoyed. They never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would be able to concoct an effective antidote at the last minute. Just as everyone was about to praise Bailey Hongzhuang could no longer hold on, and her body fell to the ground. Bewitching had been focusing all his attention on Bailey Hongzhuang. He could feel that Bailey Hongzhuang could no longer hold on. So when Bailey Hongzhuang fainted, he immediately supported her body. Master, uncle, auntie, I'll bring Hongzhuang back to rest first. Bewitching's eyes were bloodshot. Hongzhuang had become like this. The person who felt the most heartache and sadness was him. Since the antidote was effective, there was no need for them to worry. Chapter 2188. Bewitching did not send Bailey Hongzhuang back to her room. Instead, he sent her to his own room. Bailey Hongzhuang had been researching and developing an antidote recently. The herbs and other things in the room were in a mess. It was not a suitable environment for her to rest. Along the way, Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's extremely pale face and felt as if his heart had been ruthlessly smashed. It was so painful that he found it difficult to breathe. He had secretly sworn that he would never let Bailey Hongzhuang suffer so much in the future. But this time, he had still made Hongzhuang so exhausted that she had fainted. As he carried Bailey Hongzhuang, he could feel that Bailey Hongzhuang had become lighter again. In the past month, Bailey Hongzhuang had lost a lot of weight. He had painstakingly fattened Bailey Hongzhuang up, but now, she was even thinner than before. Even though he was not a doctor, he could see how weak Bailey Hongzhuang was now. The three beasts were shocked when they saw Bewitching carrying Bailey Hongzhuang back. But soon, they realized that Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen into a coma. What's wrong with Master? Baisher quickly asked. She has used up too much energy. Her body cannot take it anymore. Bewitching said in a low voice. He was in a terrible mood. To him, nothing was more important than Hongzhuang. Now that Hongzhuang was so weak, he could only vent his anger on himself. Master has been too tired these days. She has not slept a wink. Xiaohei looked anxiously at Bailey Hongzhuang. They had been very worried when they saw their master's desperate look. They had not expected things to turn out this way. When Bewitching carried Bailey Hongzhuang back, Mu Lingbing immediately went to find Gu Jinghe. Since Bailey Hongzhuang had vomited blood, the situation must be very serious. They had to get a doctor to take a look. Gu Jinghe was very anxious when she found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had fallen into a coma. She immediately went to find a doctor. Mu Jins had already fallen into such a situation. She could not let anything happen to Bailey Hongzhuang. After Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao found a doctor, they quickly headed to Bailey Hongzhuang's residence. After the doctor took Bailey Hongzhuang's pulse, his expression turned ugly. What did you make her do? Her mental energy is so severely depleted and her body is so weak. She is a girl. You can't treat her like an Iron Man. The doctor had obviously never seen anyone who could be so exhausted. Originally, he still maintained respect for Gu Jinghe and the others, but at this moment, he couldn't help but speak with anger. He was a doctor of Sun Moon Palace, and his status was not low. Bailey Hongzhuang was so young, but she was so exhausted. It was as if her body had been completely drained. He found it hard to imagine. Hearing the doctor's reprimand, everyone's expressions turned ugly. They felt deeply guilty. These days, Bailey Hongzhuang was truly exhausted. They had only thought of Mu Jin's and had not considered whether Bailey Hongzhuang could endure it. "Doctor, how is her condition? Will there be any problems?" Di Beichen quickly asked. This result was within his expectations. He was more concerned about whether Hongzhuang would be in any danger. She needs to rest well and replenish her nutrition. Her body can be slowly replenished, but her mental energy can only be slowly recovered through rest. Chapter 2189. This young lady is young and her body's condition isn't bad. That's why she's been able to persevere until now. Every time her body is drained, it will have a huge impact. I will do my best to help her adjust. As for whether there will be any side effects, I can't guarantee it. The doctor was furious that Bailey Hongzhuang would be so exhausted. He didn't know what the first elder and the others had been busy with recently, but he couldn't allow a young lady to be so exhausted. If he didn't say this, no one would understand the severity of the problem. "Doctor, you must take good care of her," Di Beichen hastily pleaded the doctor. He absolutely couldn't let anything happen to Bailey Hongzhuang. That was something he couldn't bear. Dr. Su glanced at Di Beichen. He could see that Di Beichen was truly concerned about Bailey Hongzhuang. Only then did his expression soften. "I will do my best, but the most important thing right now is for her to rest well. I'm afraid she'll be unconscious for a while." Dr. Su looked at the unconscious Bailey Hongzhuang. It wasn't as if he had never seen someone so tired that they fainted. There were many cultivation maniacs in this world who didn't care about their own bodies in order to raise their cultivation. What shocked him was that he had never seen anyone like Bailey Hongzhuang who was in such a bad situation. He simply couldn't imagine how Bailey Hongzhuang had persevered until now. The more she was in this kind of situation, the more difficult it was to persevere. After Dr. Su left, Mu Lingbing and the others' expressions were extremely unsightly. "It's all our fault for putting all the pressure on Yishuan. Her body has already deteriorated to this extent, but we didn't know." Mu Lingbing's eyes gradually moistened. Looking at the deathly pale and unconscious Bailey Hongzhuang, she felt an indescribable heartache. As Bailey Hongzhuang's mother, she truly felt guilty. Lan Yixiao's expression was gloomy and no emotion could be seen. But from his flickering eyes, one could see his heartache. Everyone fell silent. The current situation was something none of them wanted to see. However, under such circumstances, they had no other choice. This feeling of helplessness made everyone feel even more uncomfortable. "I'll stay here to take care of Hongzhuang. Uncle, Andy, you can go and rest first," Di Beichen said slowly, his deep voice somewhat stiff. When Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao heard Di Beichen's words, their gazes changed. It seemed that Di Beichen was still holding a grudge against Bailey Hongzhuang for being too tired. Before this, Di Beichen had already tried to persuade Bailey Hongzhuang to rest, even if it was only for one night. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not agree. Instead, she immersed herself in developing the antidote. They also saw it, but under such circumstances, they didn't know what to say. After all their hopes rested on Bailey Hongzhuang. "Beichun, then take good care of Hongzhuang. We'll leave first." Mu Lingbing was about to say something, but Lan Yunxiao patted her shoulder, indicating for her to leave with him. Seeing this, Mu Lingbing glanced at Lan Yunxiao before walking out with him. Chapter 2190. Di Beichen understood that this was a situation that no one wanted to see. Rather than saying that he was angry at others, it was better to say that he was angry at himself. He couldn't help Hongzhuang in this matter at all. He could only let Hongzhuang bear it by herself. Looking at that pale and clean little face, he really felt his heart ache. The three beasties left the room together. Recently, Master had been busy concocting the antidote and rarely had time to spend with Di Beichen. At this time, they naturally wouldn't be third wheels. "White Lion, is Master's situation very bad right now?" Xiao He and Xiao Bai looked at White Lion. The contract between White Lion and Master was different from theirs. White Lion and Master could sense each other's condition. White Lion nodded. "Master's breathing is very weak, but her life isn't in danger. Hearing this, Xiao He and Xiao Bai relaxed. They had been with Master for so long, and this was definitely the most tiring time for her. When the three beasties walked out of the room, they saw Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao still standing outside, their faces full of worry. "Uncle, Auntie, is grandmother feeling better after drinking Master's medicine?" Xiao He asked. "That medicine is indeed effective. The parasites in grandmother's body have already been suppressed," Mu Lingbing replied. At the last moment, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't disappoint and concocted a useful antidote. Hearing Mu Lingbing's words, joy surfaced on the three beasties' faces. In that case, Master's efforts during this period had been effective. Before Master left, she warned us that if she fainted, there were several portions of medicine in her room for grandmother to drink a bowl every day, Xiao Bai said slowly. This was what Master had specifically instructed them to do. As long as the medicine was effective, Mu Jins had to continue drinking it. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao were both stunned by Xiao Bai's words. Yishuan already knew that she would faint. Master's body couldn't hold on any longer. The only reason he could hold on until today was because of his stubbornness. This morning, she couldn't take the medicine anymore after she finished it. That's why she specifically instructed us to do this. White Lion felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Master was really suffering too much. They had tried to persuade their master, but to no avail. After that, they continued to accompany their master and no longer spoke of such matters, because they didn't want their master to regret it. If their grandmother lost her life just like that, their master would definitely be very sad, so they could only choose to accompany her. Mu Lingbing and Lan Yunxiao looked at each other. Their heartache and guilt intensified. Bailey Hongzhuang had truly done everything to the extreme. Over the next few days, Mu Jinsei's condition gradually improved as she continued to consume the medicinal soup. Just from Mu Jinsei's gradually improving complexion, it could be seen that Situ Yin was by Mu Jinsei's side every day, personally taking care of her. Bailey Hongzhuang remained in a deep sleep. Dr. Su had come to check on her several times and fed Bailey Hongzhuang some spirit medicine, hoping that she would recover quickly. Chapter 2191. 7 days later, Mu Jinsei slowly woke up, feeling a throbbing pain in her head. Just as she was about to move, she noticed a figure beside her bed. She thought it was Mu Lingbing who had fallen asleep beside her, but upon closer inspection, it was clearly a man. When Mu Jinsei saw the man's true appearance, her mind couldn't help but explode. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. She fell into a daze, unable to believe what she was seeing. How could this be? Mu Jinsei's first thought was that she had just woken up and wasn't clear-headed enough to see such a scene. However, when she looked again, she was certain that the person beside her was him, Situ Yin. This was the man she hated so much and who had ruined her life. She had wanted nothing to do with him for the rest of her life, but this man had actually appeared in front of her now. "Get out of here!" Mu Jinsei roared. The sudden voice woke Situ Yin up. He raised his head and saw that Mu Jinsei had woken up. He couldn't help but feel joy in his heart. However, when Situ Yin saw the sudden change in Mu Jinsei's expression, he realized that the situation was bad. "Jinsei, get out of here. I don't want to see you." Mu Jinsei couldn't control her emotions. When she thought of her disfigured appearance, she hated that she couldn't just disappear. "Jinsei, listen to my explanation." Situ Yin hurriedly said. "Get out of here. Get out. Get out of here." Mu Jinsei didn't want to hear a single word from Situ Yin. She threw a pillow and a cup at him. Right now, she didn't have time to think about why Situ Yin was here. She only wanted him to disappear from her sight as soon as possible. Situ Yin panicked when he saw Mu Jinsei's hysterical state. Although he had expected that Mu Jinsei would be upset when she saw him, the situation in front of him had clearly exceeded his expectations. All right. I'll leave immediately. Don't be agitated." Situ Yin retreated as he comforted her. However, all of this was useless. "Get out of here quickly." Mu Jinsei felt like she was going crazy. She had become like this, and the last person she wanted to see was Si Tu-yin. She was such a proud woman, but now that Si Tu-yin had seen her most unbearable side, how could she not go crazy? Bang! Si Tu-yin hurriedly closed the door. He wasn't worried about Mu Jin-se scolding him. No matter how Mu Jin-se scolded him, he didn't care. It was just that Mu Jin-se had just woken up and her body had finally gotten better. He couldn't let his appearance affect Mu Jin-se's body. After Si Tu-yin disappeared from her sight, Mu Jin-se hurriedly got off the bed and locked the door. She gasped for breath as tears blurred her vision. She was now certain that the person she saw earlier was Si Tu-yin. She did not understand why Si Tu-yin would appear here, but she could not accept the way she was now. Why did it turn out like this? Mu Jin-se couldn't help but ask. What was this damn man doing here? He had already ruined her entire life and destroyed all her hopes. Could it be that he was still going to pity her now? Chapter 2192. When she thought of Si Tu-yin seeing her in such a sorry state, Mu Jin-se felt that she might as well just die. Even in that short period of time, she had seen the pain and guilt in Si Tu-yin's eyes. Mu Jin-se only found this even more laughable. When she had wanted to be with Si Tu-yin, Si Tu-yin had told her firmly that the person he wanted was Usiching. She had left with bruises all over her body. Even though her face was covered in tears, Si Tu-yin had not hesitated at all when he had turned around. Since he had been so cruel to her at that time, why was he acting like he cared about her now? As for guilt, he had ruined her life and caused Ling Bing and Yi Xian to suffer so much. Now, he was acting like he was feeling guilty? Wasn't this just too laughable? Mu Jin-se's eyes flashed with hatred, but after this hatred, she wanted to cry even more. Mu Ling Bing had just finished boiling the medicine when she saw Si Tu-yin standing at the door with a disappointed expression. She couldn't help but ask, "Father, what's wrong?" Jin-se has woken up. It was just a simple sentence, but Mu Ling Bing understood what had happened, and her expression changed. "Mother saw you? Did she chase you out in a frenzy?" In the past few days, Mu Ling Bing had known that Mu Jin-se hated Si Tu-yin, but she had not explained it to Si Tu-yin. Now that Mu Jin-se had seen Si Tu-yin as soon as she woke up, she would definitely not be able to accept it. Si Tu-yin nodded. She has suffered a great blow and is in a terrible mood. Accompany her well. I'll go back first. Si Tu-yin understood that Mu Jin-se's misunderstanding of him was too deep. It was not something that could be resolved in a short period of time. If he continued to stay here, it would only make it harder for Mu Jin-se to calm down. Mu Ling Bing nodded and looked at Si Tu-yin's back as he left. She sighed in her heart. It wasn't easy for Si Tu-yin either. He had been misunderstood and hated all his life. She had to help him resolve this misunderstanding as soon as possible. Since Mu Jin-se had seen her, she might as well use this as a breakthrough to explain what had happened all those years ago. Just as Mu Ling Bing was about to push the door open, she found that it was locked. She couldn't help but shout, "Mother, it's me. Open the door." Hearing Mu Ling Bing's words, Mu Jin-se asked in a low voice, "You brought him here?" "Mother, this matter is complicated. I have to explain it to you properly." "You don't have to explain to me. I don't want to hear it." Mu Jin's attitude was firm. She didn't want to know anything about that man. Could it be that that man had come here to acknowledge Mu Ling Bing and Lan Yixuan? "Mother, let me in first. You haven't drunk your medicine today. Yixuan specially concocted this for you. I want to be alone. You can leave first." "Mother, Yixuan has already been unconscious for many days in order to help you concoct the antidote. You can't let Yixuan down. If you don't drink the medicine, this goo poison can't be removed. Wouldn't that be making Yixuan work for nothing?" Mu Ling Bing naturally couldn't let Mu Jin-se stay here alone. She had to see Mu Jin-se and explain everything clearly. Hearing that Bailey Hongzhuang was unconscious, Mu Jin-se couldn't help but panic. "What did you say? Yixuan is unconscious? Why is she unconscious?" Chapter 2193. Mu Ling Bing heaved a sigh of relief when she saw Mu Jin-se open the door. She was really worried that Mu Jin Southeast would close the door to her bedroom like before and seal herself up again. Yixuan has been thinking of ways to restrain the goo poison without rest these days. She fainted from exhaustion and has been in a coma for 7 days now. She hasn't woken up yet. Speaking of Bailey Hongzhuang, Mu Lingbing couldn't help but worry. Over the past few days, Situ Yin had been taking care of Mu Jinsei while she stayed at the residence to keep an eye on Bailey Hongzhuang's condition. She's tired because of me? Mu Jinsei was stunned and immediately understood. Her heart was filled with worry. Since I'm already in this state, how can I let Yixuan tire herself out because of me? How is she now? When will she wake up? Mu Jinsei never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang would fall into such a state because of her. Her heart couldn't help but ache for her. Mu Lingbing shook her head. I don't know yet, but Dr. Su said that Yixuan's condition is gradually improving. Once she recovers, she will wake up. Mother, take care of your body first. Yixuan fainted because of you. If you don't get better, then Yixuan will be very disappointed when she wakes up. Hearing this, Mu Jinsei sighed. Yixuan is a good child. My old bones have already become like this, and I'm actually dragging down a child. I really shouldn't have. Mother, Yixuan and I finally reunited with you. Yixuan naturally doesn't want anything to happen to you. Now that you've found a way to cure the goo poison, Yixuan's body is gradually improving. Overall, this is a good thing. Mu Lingbing handed the medicine to Mu Jinsei, and Mu Jinsei drank it without hesitation. Just as Mu Lingbing said, she couldn't let all of Bailey Hongzhuang's efforts go to waste. Tell me about Yixuan's condition. I want to go see her. All right, then let's go see her. Mu Lingbing didn't refuse. Mu Jinsei's condition seemed to have improved a lot. If she didn't let her take a look, Mu Jinsei wouldn't be at ease. Mu Jins wrapped herself up tightly before arriving at Bailey Hongzhuang's room. Lan Yunxiao and Di Beichan were shocked when they saw Mu Jins leaving her sleeping quarters. I'm here to see Yixuan. Mu Jinsei walked into the room. After seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's unconscious appearance, her eyes couldn't help but turn red. Her heart was in turmoil. It's all because of this useless grandmother of mine. Yixuan has suffered. After Di Beichan heard Mu Jinsei's words, the darkness in his eyes gradually disappeared. Mu Jinsei's line of sight couldn't help but fall on Di Beichan's body. Looking at this young and elegant young man, she couldn't help but ask, Mother, this is Yixuan's sweetheart, Di Beichan, Mu Lingbing introduced. Greetings to grandmother. Di Beichan bowed. Although he had already met Mu Jinsei, this was her first time seeing him. Mu Jinsei nodded, her eyes filled with admiration. What a young and promising young man. He's extremely compatible with Yixuan. But this name seems somewhat familiar. Chapter 2194. Hearing Mu Jin's words, Di Beichan and Mu Lingbing looked at each other, but neither of them continued the topic. Mu Jins was relieved when she found out that Bailey Hongzhuang's condition was gradually improving. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang was not in danger, her heart would feel a little better. However, when Mu Jins walked out of the room, she discovered that Si Tian was outside as well. Instantly, Mu Jin's expression darkened. She didn't even want to look at Si Tian as she walked towards the sleeping quarters. She never wanted to see this man again in this lifetime. She wanted to ask Mu Lingbing why she had allowed this man to appear here. Seeing this, Mu Lingbing followed behind Mu Jinsei and returned to the sleeping quarters. Today, she had to explain this matter clearly. She believed that even if she didn't say anything, Mu Jins would definitely ask her. As expected, the moment they returned to the sleeping quarters, Mu Jins spoke with a gloomy expression. It was you who allowed that fellow to enter the Sun Moon Palace. Mu Jins found it hard to believe. That man had treated them so badly, and Mu Lingbing had still allowed him to enter. Furthermore, she had never heard Mu Lingbing mention anything about Si Tian before this. However, when she had been unconscious, it had been Si Tian who had been by her side. This was simply too hard for her to accept. Mu Lingbing nodded. Yes. After receiving Mu Lingbing's confirmation, Mu Jins felt an indescribable rage rise in her chest. Why did you let that man in? Hasn't he done enough for you all these years? Mu Jins couldn't understand. Even if Si Tian was Mu Lingbing's father by blood, that man had done nothing for her all these years. Mother, actually there was a hidden story behind what happened back then. It's not what you think. I don't want to hear any explanations. I just want that man to leave. Mu Jin's attitude was firm. Ling Bing, he is your father. If you want to acknowledge him, that's your freedom. I won't stop you. Similarly, I don't want to see this man either. This is my choice. When Mu Ling Bing saw Mu Jin's resolute attitude, she understood that all these years, Mu Jin's hated Situ, Yin to the bone. In the past, Mu Jin Sei still had deep feelings for Si-Tu Yin. However, everything that happened after that was like a sharp knife that pierced Mu Jin Sei's heart again and again, causing her to completely lose all hope for Si-Tu Yin. Mother, let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about it calmly. Actually, the people who saved me from you Siqing were Yi Xuan and Situ Yin. In front of Mu Jin Sei, Mu Ling Bing could only call Situ Yin by his name. If she had used any other form of address, Mu Jin Sei would have been even more agitated. Hearing Mu Ling Bing's words, Mu Jin Sei paused slightly, but her expression remained cold. So what? It's all thanks to him that you and Yun Xiao fell into such a situation. Are we supposed to be grateful to him for saving all of you? Don't say these meaningless words to me. Gao first. Mu Jin Sei obviously didn't want to discuss this matter with Mu Ling Bing any further. Since things had already come to this point, no matter what Situ Yin did, it would all be in vain. Chapter 2195. When Mu Ling Bing saw Mu Jin Sei's unyielding attitude, she quickly told her everything that had happened. However, Mu Jin Sei clearly didn't believe her. She had personally experienced everything that had happened. It was Situ Yin who had clearly told her that he wouldn't be with her and that the person who would be with him was Yu Siqing. Even though several decades had passed, she still remembered this scene clearly. Had Situ Yin changed his story in order to give Mu Ling Bing a good impression of him? However, she was still alive and she remembered everything clearly. She was such a proud woman. After she had given Situ Yin her chastity, she had been waiting for him to make a promise to her. However, she had never thought that Situ Yin would be such a heartless man. The heavens had played a huge joke on her. In just one night, Situ Yin and Yu Siqing were together. It was as if, from the start, Situ Yin had never been true to her. He had only treated her as a plaything and had casually tossed her aside. She had wanted him to stay and give her an explanation, but he hadn't even given her the chance. He had swiftly turned around and led Yu Siqing away like a victor. He had ruthlessly trampled her pride under his feet and shattered it all over the floor. Mu Jin Sei pushed Mu Ling Bing out of the room. She really didn't want to have anything to do with that man. It would only make her feel that she had been a joke. However, just as Mu Ling Bing was about to leave the room, she said something. At that time, Situ Yin thought that the person that night was Yu Siqing. Yu Siqing had drugged him and caused Situ Yin to misunderstand. Mu Ling Bing looked at the tightly shut doors of the bedchamber, a look of helplessness on her face. The grudge from back then was too deep, and it wasn't going to be easy to resolve it now. It looked like this matter wouldn't be resolved in a short period of time. She could only let Situ Yin slowly explain. After all, Situ Yin had caused Mu Jin Sei so much pain for so many years. Situ Yin would definitely spend a lot of time before he could open Mu Jin Sei's heart. She believed that Situ Yin had already made preparations for this. Mu Ling Bing tried a few times, but when she saw that Mu Jin Sei didn't show any signs of opening the door, she finally left. However, Mu Ling Bing didn't know how much shock her last words had brought to Mu Jin Sei. Mu Jin Sei had never thought of such a possibility. That night, Situ Yin had indeed acted very strangely. If all of this was Yu Siqing's trap, then Mu Jin Sei's body, which was leaning against the door, couldn't help but slide to the ground. If this was all a misunderstanding, then she couldn't imagine such an outcome, nor could she believe that all of this was real. 3 days later, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly woke up. Di Beichen had been guarding by Bailey Hongzhuang's side the whole time. When he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had woken up, he couldn't help but have a look of joy on his face. "Wife, you're awake." Di Beichen hurriedly poured a glass of water and brought it to Bailey Hongzhuang's lips. Bailey Hongzhuang indeed felt thirsty. She only felt better after drinking the entire glass of water. "Di Beichen, how long have I been unconscious?" "You've been unconscious for 10 days. Di Beichen's heart ached. Chapter 2196. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was concerned about Mu Jin's condition the moment she woke up, Di Beichen's heart ached even more. "Don't worry, grandmother's condition is very good. She has already woken up and the antidote you made is very effective." Hearing Di Beichen's words, Bailey Hongzhuang felt relieved. Previously, she had only confirmed that the antidote had a certain effect, but she didn't know what happened after that. "That's good." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Grandmother was finally fine. As long as she confirmed that the antidote was effective, she was confident that she could completely remove the goo poison from her grandmother's body. Previously, she didn't know that it was a goo poison, which was why she spent so much time. Now that she had a better understanding of the goo poison, it wouldn't be difficult to get rid of it. "Wife, how do you feel? Is there any part of your body that doesn't feel well?" After Di Beichen asked, the three beasts came over. "Master, don't think about anything else. The most important thing is your body." Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. "Don't worry, I'm just exhausted. It won't affect me much." As a doctor herself, she understood her own condition very well. Long before she had fainted, she had already understood her own body's condition. It was because she understood her own body that she decided to give it a try. "Master, Dr. Su said that doing this will harm your body and leave behind repercussions in the future," Xiaohei said seriously. Every time something happens to someone else, Master would always do her best. But how could she not take good care of her own body? Hearing that, Bailey Hongzhuang was stunned for a moment before she understood. "I won't let my body have any repercussions. Don't worry." This kind of deficit did have a certain effect. After all, there would always be problems when the body's energy was completely depleted. However, she had a way to adjust to this situation, so she didn't need to worry. Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't being perfunctory, Di Beichen and the three beasts were relieved. After all, Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills were not comparable to ordinary doctors. "Master, is Yu Siqing's poison technique that powerful?" White Lion could not help but ask. In the past, Yu Siqing had made so many poisons, and Master had been able to neutralize them all in a short period of time. However, this time, Master was exhausted to such an extent that he could only neutralize it. It could be seen that Yu Siqing was powerful. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. This goo poison was not controlled by Yu Siqing. She must have obtained this goo worm by chance. If I'm not wrong, she should only have one goo, and she chose to put it on her grandmother. From the previous confrontation, Bailey Hongzhuang already had a direct understanding of Yu Siqing's poison skills. The poison that Yu Siqing had concocted had nothing to do with goo poison. It was because of this that she had never thought of goo poison. If Yu Siqing was very familiar with goo poison, then the poison she concocted would not be like this. I see. The three beasts finally understood. She had used the most vicious goo poison on her grandmother. How abominable. Next time, I will prepare an even bigger gift for her. Chapter 2197. When they found out that Bailey Hongzhuang had regained consciousness, Mu Ling Bing and the others all ran over in joy. To everyone, the sky had cleared up after the storm. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mu Jins were both safe and sound. This was the best news. After Bailey Hongzhuang had regained consciousness, her body had quickly recovered. Dr. Su was extremely shocked when he saw Bailey Hongzhuang's speedy recovery. When he found out about Bailey Hongzhuang's medical skills, he was even more astonished. To possess such medical skills at such a young age, she was truly worthy of being called a genius doctor. "Mother, has maternal grandmother been shutting herself in her bedchamber all this time?" After Bailey Hongzhuang learned about Mu Jin's situation, she couldn't help but frown. As early as before, they had already expected that once Situ Yin appeared in front of Mu Jins would inevitably lose control of her emotions. Initially, they had planned to completely cure Mu Jins before Situ Yin went to see Mu Jins. At least this way, they would be able to preserve Mu Jin's self-esteem and pride. However, none of them had expected that Mu Jins would be able to see Situ Yin first. This made the situation even more difficult to handle. The way I see it, the knot in your maternal grandmother's heart isn't something that can be easily untied. It's a long road ahead. Mu Lingbing sighed. She had been telling Mu Jins about what had happened in the past every day, and she had already explained everything that needed to be explained. She believed that Mu Jins would have heard everything she had said from within the bedchamber. However, Mu Jinsei did not respond from the start to the end, so there was nothing she could do. Since maternal grandmother can't accept it, we don't need to be anxious. Bailey Hongzhuang was very calm. She believed that maternal grandmother's thoughts would gradually change after finding out about this. However, she had held a grudge for too many years, and it would take some time for her to let go. Let's not talk about this with maternal grandmother for now. Let me get rid of the goo poison in maternal grandmother's body and restore her looks. I believe that everything will slowly get better. Mu Lingbing nodded. She couldn't help but grab Bailey Hongzhuang's hand, her eyes filled with anticipation. Yishuan, can you really restore your grandmother's appearance? As long as the goo poison is removed and I clear out the poison in her body one by one, grandmother will definitely be able to recover her looks. Bailey Hongzhuang's face rippled with an elegant and confident smile. She had already conquered this goo poison. Completely eliminating it was absolutely not a problem. That's great. Over the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang helped Mu Jins recover her appearance. At first, Mu Jinsei didn't believe that her appearance could be restored, but when she saw the charred black on her body gradually dissipating and her skin slowly recovering, she had no choice but to believe it. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang surprised her even more and filled her with hope. She thought that she would have to live like this for the rest of her life, but now she had the chance to see the light of day again. This was simply her dream. 7 days later, when Mu Jinsei walked out into the sunlight again, Mu Lingbing and the rest were shocked. This was because the Mu Jinsei in front of him was still that elegant and charming woman from back then. Compared to her elegant and refined appearance in the past, the passage of time had caused her to become more elegant and tolerant. Chapter 2198. When Gu Jinghe saw Mu Jins in this state, her tears couldn't help flowing. She thought she would never see Mu Jins again in this lifetime. She didn't expect Mu Jins to be able to return to her original state. When Mu Jins saw Gu Jinghe, her eyes were also filled with tears. After she left Tiangang's sect, she and Gu Jinghe were like sisters. All these years, it was Gu Jinghe who had helped her. However, after she was disfigured, she didn't want Gu Jinghe to see her like this, so she hid. Palace Master. Gu Jinghe choked with sobs. Jinghe. The two sisters hadn't seen each other for more than 10 years. At this moment, they were both speechless. Mu Lingbing covered her mouth with her hand, afraid she would cry out loud. Even though Bailey Hongzhuang had promised that she would be able to restore Mu Jins to her original state, when this scene really appeared in front of her, her heart was filled with unspeakable shock. She really recovered. Lan Yinxiao was also in disbelief. Lan Yinxiao also found it hard to believe. He was very clear on what Mu Jins looked like before, but Bailey Hongzhuang actually had a way to restore her. She was really too powerful. Bewitching looked at Bailey Hongzhuang, who was standing next to Mu Jins, with a face full of smiles. She had done it. She had turned the rotten into the miraculous, turning the impossible into the possible. A family reunion. She had really done it. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching looked at each other. There was no need for words. Now, they only needed Situ Yin and Mu Jin's relationship to improve. Then, they would truly have a family reunion. They could embark on another journey. In the distance, Situ Yin secretly watched Mu Jin's recover her original appearance. His heart was filled with uncontrollable excitement. However, even now, Mu Jintse was still unwilling to see him, so he could only hide in the distance and quietly watch. No matter what, as long as he saw Mu Jintse recover, he was already very happy. As for what he owed Mu Jintse in the past, he was willing to use his entire life to repay it. He believed that there would be a day when Mu Jintse would accept him. Even if Mu Jintse didn't accept him, as long as he had the chance to treat Mu Jintse well, that was his happiness. After Mu Jintse's body recovered, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others discussed and decided to return to Tiangong sect. After all, they had left Tiangong sect for a long time. Although the elders and hall masters had been taking care of Tiangong sect, it was not appropriate for them to never go back. There were always some things that needed someone to oversee the sect. When Mu Jintse found out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest were preparing to leave, she was also very surprised. You want to return to Tiangong sect? Why don't you just stay in the Sun Moon Palace? That way, your grandmother can take care of you. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Grandma, I will come to see you often. Bewitching is the young master of Tiangong sect. After leaving the sect for so long, I have to go back and have a look. Hearing this, Mu Jintse unhappily said, You guys stay behind and let that old fellow leave. He is the sect master of Tiangong sect. Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but snicker. Grandfather still has the most important thing in his life to do. We can't let grandfather delay this important matter, so we can only help. These days, Situ Yin had completely exhausted Mu Jintse. Chapter 2199. After seeing Situ Yan's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang also understood who Bewitching had taken after when he pursued her. However, Bailey Hongzhuang naturally wouldn't say this out loud. Previously, Mu Jintse had tried to chase Situ Yin out of Sun Moon Palace. However, Great Elder Gu Jinghe had become an accomplice after learning of the situation. Every time Situ Yin was chased out, Gu Jinghe would let him in again. Thus, Mu Jintse's attempts to chase him out were completely useless. In the end, Mu Jintse was too lazy to say anything. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest saw Situ Yin and Mu Jintse's game of cat and mouse, they found it extremely funny. However, the two elders had already wasted their entire lives. Now that there was a chance for them to reconcile, they naturally thought of ways to help. After hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Mu Jintse's expression was awkward and unnatural. She was already so old, yet she was still being laughed at by her granddaughter and grandson-in-law. She was truly embarrassed. Grandmother, grandfather already knows his wrongs. If possible, please forgive him. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was full of smiles. They could feel that Mu Jintse's attitude was gradually changing. As long as a few more days passed, they believed that everything would change. Mu Jintse didn't reply to Bailey Hongzhuang's words and said, Then be careful on the road. Come to Sun Moon Palace when you have time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Grandmother, we will definitely come back often. Yixuan, you and Bewitching have to take good care of yourselves. We will also return in a few days. Mu Lingbing smiled. Mu Lingbing had grown up in Sun Moon Palace since she was young. Now that she was staying in Sun Moon Palace, she felt more at ease. Moreover, Mu Lingbing and Lan Yinxiao didn't know how to arrange their identities after they went to Tiangong sect, so it was better for them to stay in Sun Moon Palace. The poison in their bodies had already been purged, but their cultivation had decreased greatly. Sun Moon Palace was rich in origin energy, so they had to stay here and cultivate properly, striving to recover their strength as soon as possible. Only after they recovered their strength could they return to the Lan family. Father, mother will be leaving first. Bailey Hongzhuang was full of smiles. This kind of separation was not really a separation for them at all. She believed that the next time they met, they would all be better. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching left the Tiangong sect. The incident with the medicine sect had caused the Tiangong sect to become the focus of attention of all forces. This time, they had been away for such a long time. Presumably, there were many things that needed to be dealt with in the sect. Obviously, it was impossible for Situ Yin to return to Tiangong sect in a short time. So this heavy responsibility was completely handed over to Bewitching. According to Situ Yan's words, Bewitching was fully qualified to be the sect master of Tiangang sect. As long as he reconciled with Mu Jinsei, he would stay in Sun Moon Palace. He didn't intend to care about the matters of Tiangang sect. Regarding this, Bewitching only felt helpless. However, Master had been busy for so many years. Now, he could indeed enjoy his life. Since he was young, he had hoped that Master would be able to fulfill his wishes and enjoy his old age happily. Now that Master had found what he wanted, he naturally wouldn't obstruct Master. This time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching left with smiles on their faces. During this time, they had made great progress. The next time they came to Sun Moon Palace, they wouldn't be stopped outside the mountain. Chapter 2200. Bailey Hongzhuang and Bewitching returned to Tiangang sect in high spirits. Ever since her grandmother had recovered from her injuries, Bailey Hongzhuang could finally relax. She had never felt so relaxed before. In the past, too many things had piled up in her heart. She was worried that she would not be able to save her parents in time and worried that her grandmother was no longer in this world. Fortunately, the heavens were not so cruel to them, and everything had changed for the better. If Yusiching knew that she had allowed Mu Jins to enjoy years of torture in exchange for giving them a chance to reunite as a family, Yusiching's expression would be even more sinister. However, before Bailey Hongzhuang began her revenge, she would not let Yusiching know about this. Previously, when she had removed the child worm from Mu Jin's body, Bailey Hongzhuang had not killed the child worm, but had kept it. If there was a chance, the child worm would be very useful in the future. Wife, guess when Master will be able to reconcile with you and grandmother? Bewitching was clearly in a good mood. Along the way, he would occasionally joke with Bailey Hongzhuang. The knot in grandmother's heart is very deep. Although she now knows the origin of everything, based on grandmother's character, she will not be able to accept it in a short period of time. Her delicate and beautiful face was filled with a confident smile. Bailey Hongzhuang understood that Mu Jins was a proud person. Even if Mu Jin's hatred towards Sidian had been completely erased, it would not be easy for her to put down her pride and accept Situyan. However, the only thing she could be sure of was the final outcome. They would be together in the end. Master's abilities are not bad. I feel that this day will not be too far away. Bewitching was full of smiles. His already handsome face was now filled with warmth and brightness, like the resplendent sunlight, dazzling people's eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head to look at Bewitching beside her. She only felt that the sunlight and Bewitching's smile contrasted together, warming her heart. Wife, after we return to Tiangang sect, the competition between the four halls will begin. Bewitching restrained his smile, and his handsome face was full of serious color. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows. She had previously heard that there would be a competition between the four palaces, but she was not clear on the exact time of the competition. Is this competition very important? Why you look so serious? Bailey Hongzhuang asked. Bewitching nodded. This competition is indeed very important. As soon as he said that, Bailey Hongzhuang's expression turned serious. Since Bewitching said so bluntly that this competition was very important, then it must be very important. The competition between the four halls is only an internal competition within Tiangang sect and is not considered important. However, this competition was related to another matter. Every 3 years, the major sects and aristocratic families would jointly hold a competition. As long as one could obtain an outstanding performance in this competition, they would be rewarded handsomely. These rewards were jointly provided by the various sects and aristocratic families, so the richness of the rewards could be imagined. To the disciples, the most important thing was naturally the rewards. However, to the various powers, the most important thing was the ranking. This competition can reflect the strength of the various sects to a certain extent. If one's ranking was low, it would be a loss of face. Chapter 2201. To you. As long as you participate in this competition, you'll be able to compete with Lan Qingyan on the same platform. Di Beichen's words exploded in Bailey Hongzhuang's heart. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze suddenly froze, and a complicated expression emerged on her charming face. Lan Qingyan, this name had long been engraved in her heart. This woman had snatched everything from her, and now she was shamelessly enjoying something that did not belong to her. She had always wanted to compete with Lan Qingyan, and now this opportunity had appeared in front of her. All the major sects and aristocratic families will place their most outstanding successors and youths in this competition. Lan Qingyan, as the most famous person in the Lan family, will definitely participate. At this point, there was no need to doubt. So, I have to obtain a good enough result in this Four Palaces exchange competition before I can participate in this competition. Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood the crux of this. If this was really the case, then this competition between the Four Palaces, she was determined to win. Di Beichen nodded. That's right. When will the competition between the Four Palaces be held? 3 months later. Then what about that competition? 6 months later, I will also participate. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded lightly. These days, she had been delving into the art of medicine and poison and had delayed her cultivation. However, after such a high level of deficit, her mental strength had increased by quite a bit compared to before. There's still 3 months' time. I will go into closed-door cultivation. That competition, I will definitely participate. She would not miss this opportunity. Lan Qingyan, there's still half a year's time before we can meet again. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a mocking arc. They had exchanged lives for close to 20 years, and now it was time to exchange it back. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes that flashed with a resolute light. He understood that in these 3 months' time, Bailey Hongzhuang would definitely cultivate bitterly. He was also looking forward to the wonderful expression on Lan Qingyan's face when she saw Bailey Hongzhuang. When Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang returned to Tiangang's sect together, Tiangang's sect could not help but be in an uproar. However, compared to the time when everyone doubted Bailey Hongzhuang, the situation now was undoubtedly much better. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang turned the tide in the alchemist competition, proving her ability and redeeming everyone's honor, everyone's doubts towards Bailey Hongzhuang had lessened. No matter whether they accepted it or not, the young sect master and Bailey Hongzhuang were together. Moreover, the two of them looked as though their love was stronger than gold. It was totally not what they had guessed previously that they would part soon. Di Beichen immediately went to the conference hall. He needed to understand the sect situation during this period of time when they were not around. The 4 palace masters and the Pill Refinery Palace Master all went to the conference hall, along with the various elders. Since the young sect master had returned, they were bound to report everything. Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. She had not returned for a long time. Now that she had decided to go into closed-door cultivation, she had to be prepared for it. Luckily, the Chaos Ring had the existence of the desert world. Although it was only 3 months' time, she could extend it by a lot. Chapter 2202. Bailey Hongzhuang had always been a steady cultivator. Even though elixirs were very effective in raising one's strength, Bailey Hongzhuang did not consume much of them. Based on her current situation, there was still a large gap between her and Lan Qingyan's strength. Therefore, she wanted to raise her strength by 1 point. With her current foundation, it was not a problem for her to raise her strength from the 6th level of the Green Realm to the 7th level of the Green Realm by consuming elixirs. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang went into seclusion the moment she entered the house. She wanted to use this night to break through to the 7th level of the Green Realm. In order to be able to appear in front of the Lan family, in order to be able to compete with Lan Qingyan, she had waited for a long time. Now that the opportunity had finally arrived, she naturally wouldn't miss it. While Bailey Hongzhuang was in seclusion to break through to the 6th level of the Green Realm, Di Beichen was listening to the elders and the palace master's report. Young lord, the martial arts championship will begin in half a year. We have to prepare in advance and select some outstanding disciples to participate with you. The Azure Dragon Palace Master, Yin Kaicheng, had a serious and dignified expression. The martial arts championship was a grand occasion in the entire Shengxian continent. As long as one could achieve good results in the martial arts championship, one would be truly famous. Tiangang's sect's strength had never been weak. They could not perform badly in the martial arts championship. Deep Bachin nodded slightly. Same old rules. The Four Palaces competition will be held in 3 months to select outstanding disciples. The next 3 months will be a unified experience to raise one's strength. All the palace masters and elders can begin to inform the disciples of this news so that they can prepare early. Although Di Bachin knew a lot about the martial arts championship, he had never participated in it. If his leg had not been injured previously, he would have competed in the previous martial arts championship. However, Tiangang's sect was represented by someone else at that time. This time, as the young lord of Tiangang's sect, he would personally lead the disciples to compete. He must achieve good results. Hearing Di Bachin's arrangement, the palace masters and elders all nodded. It seemed that Di Bachin had already thought of a way to deal with this matter without their reminder. Looks like the battle of the Four Palaces this time is going to be exceptionally exciting. Qin Ai's face was brimming with smiles. Usually, there were still many disciples who liked to preserve their strength during the competition of the Four Halls and did not display their full strength. However, the Battle of the Four Palaces this time was related to the martial arts championship. He believed that no matter which disciple it was, they would not give up such an opportunity to become famous. All the disciples would definitely use their trump cards. The hall masters and elders all smiled and nodded after hearing this. Their Tiangang sect had many disciples and countless genius disciples. Once the fighting spirit of these disciples was aroused, it would absolutely be a fierce battle between dragons and tigers. Now, they could start looking forward to it. Di Bachin's eyes darkened. Just as Qin Ai had said, the competition between the Four Palaces this time would be unprecedentedly difficult. Bailey Hongzhuang came to Tiangang's sect for only a short time, and during this period of time, she put her energy in other aspects. If she wanted to stand out in the Battle of the Four Palaces, it would definitely not be an easy task. However, Di Bachin was still full of confidence in Bailey Hongzhuang. Chapter 2203. When the news of the Battle of the Four Palaces and the martial arts tournament spread in Tiangang's sect, all the disciples were full of excitement and shock. Some disciples who did not know about the martial arts tournament even asked about it. After knowing the importance of a martial arts tournament, all the disciples could not help but be full of expectations. Such a good opportunity, every disciple had a chance. Of course, the premise was that their own strength was strong enough. Some disciples who did not cultivate with all their strength only felt regret after knowing about this. If they knew that the martial arts tournament was about to begin, they would have cultivated with all their strength. If they watched this opportunity slip away in front of their eyes, it was really unbearable. Similarly, some disciples who were extremely diligent on weekdays only felt that they had waited for so long and finally waited for a good opportunity. They had long been eager and could not hold back. Bailey Hongzhuang, who was cultivating in the house, did not know that the news had exploded in Tiangang's sect. Until the next day, when the sky gradually brightened, Bailey Hongzhuang opened her eyes. As she thought, with the effect of the elixir, she successfully broke through to the 7th level of the Green Realm. Moreover, after breaking through to the 7th level of the Green Realm, she found that there was still a part of the elixir in her body. As she cultivated, this part of the elixir would be completely absorbed by her, and her cultivation would be improved again. During this time, although Bailey Hongzhuang had put all her energy on her parents and grandmother, her cultivation still had a certain progress. Therefore, she was not far from breaking through to the 7th level of the Green Realm. With the elixir, it was even faster. When Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were preparing to go to the meditation field in the morning, they unexpectedly saw Bailey Hongzhuang coming out of the house. Their faces suddenly showed a strong surprise. Hongzhuang, when did you come back? Xiaojiqing looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. Since the end of the alchemist competition, they had not seen Hongzhuang and did not know when Hongzhuang came back. I just came back yesterday. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Hongzhuang, have you heard? The Battle of the Four Palaces this time concerns the martial arts championship. Xiaojiqing quickly walked to the side of Bailey Hongzhuang. The news had only come out yesterday, and everyone was very concerned about it. There were many outstanding disciples in Tiangang's sect, not to mention that the strength of those senior disciples was far stronger than them. In comparison, this batch of new disciples basically had no hope. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was not something an ordinary new disciple could compare to. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang worked hard, she might have a chance to participate. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, I've already heard. This time, whether it's the Battle of the Four Palaces or the Martial Arts Championship, it's a great opportunity for us. All of you must do your best. Even if he could not participate in the Martial Arts Championship, as long as he could perform well in the Battle of the Four Palaces and gain the attention of the Palace Master, it would be good enough. We will. Hongzhuang, you have to work harder. Xiaojiqing smiled. I will. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were sharp. This time, she would definitely get a place in the Martial Arts Championship. In this way, not only would their battle strength be improved, the effect of cultivation after their spirit power was exhausted would also be better. Deep Bachin nodded slightly. He was also very interested in the desert world, especially those strange demonic beasts that he had never seen before. They always had different characteristics when fighting. The three beasts immediately came up. We also have to work hard. As contracted beasts, they were part of their master's strength. No matter if it was a competition or other times, they were allowed to appear. Chapter 2205. Although Lan Qingyan started cultivating much earlier than Master, it was impossible for Lan Qingyan to have three contracted beasts like Master. At least in this aspect, they had better conditions than Lan Qingyan. Therefore, they must display their strength and help Master completely defeat Lan Qingyan. In the following period of time, Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun entered the desert world to cultivate at night and meditated in the cultivation room to absorb elemental energy during the day. Regarding such high-intensity cultivation, whether it was Deep Beichun, Bailey Hongzhuang, or even the three beasts, none of them had any objections. Normally, they might be able to relax a little, but at such a critical moment, no one had the slightest thought of relaxing. At the same time, the benefits of such high-intensity cultivation were also extremely shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others encountered more and more powerful demonic beasts in the desert world. Their battle methods also became more and more varied. Every battle was thrilling, because there was a big gap in strength between Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun. Deep Beichun often dealt with the most difficult ones, while Bailey Hongzhuang dealt with the slightly weaker ones. The three beasts also went all out in this desert world. Xiao He and Xiao Bai's figures changed size at will, and they became more and more proficient in using the yin-yang 8 trigrams formation. Previously, Xiao He and Xiao Bai also spent a lot of effort to cultivate the yin-yang 8 trigrams formation, but they didn't have much opportunity to test it on normal days. Ever since they had this desert world, they didn't have to worry about not having a place to test it. What they were most worried about was exhausting the elemental energy in their body and the demonic beasts attacking again. That was the worst. Deep Beichun also felt the benefits of this desert world. The demonic beasts here were endless, and the deeper they went, the stronger they were. He didn't have any suitable opponents when cultivating in Tiangang's sect. In the past, Master would occasionally spar with him, but now there was no chance. If he didn't have this desert world, he could only leave Tiangang's sect to find a place to cultivate. However, with this desert world, it was undoubtedly much more convenient. In the process of fighting in the desert world, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also found that these blood demon crystals were not harmful to Baishur. On the contrary, they could promote the growth of Baishur's cultivation base. The effects seemed to be stronger than the usual demon crystals. Usually, Bailey Hongzhuang had to spend a lot of effort just to prepare enough rations for Baishur. Now that they were here, Baishur's rations were completely solved, which was undoubtedly a good thing. In the process of consuming the blood demon crystal, Baishur's strength continued to rise. Not only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, but all the disciples of Tiangang Zong were working hard to cultivate in order to amaze the world in 3 months and be famous in 6 months. As the young sect master of Tiangang sect, Di Beichun was even more willing to part with these cultivation resources. The martial arts championship was a competition that every force attached great importance to. If they fell in the rankings in this martial arts championship, the reputation of the sect would be damaged. As the representative of Tiangang sect, Di Beichun had to perform well in this martial arts championship. Therefore, when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun retreated from the desert world, they used the cultivation resources while cultivating in the cultivation room. As a result, the speed at which his strength was increasing had increased by a few notches. Chapter 2206. Bailey Hongzhuang felt that time had passed extremely quickly as she cultivated like an ascetic monk. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. To other cultivators, it might have been 3 months, but to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, it was close to a year's time. For an entire year, if they weren't fighting in the desert world, they were cultivating in the cultivation room. Wife, the competition of the 4 palaces will begin tomorrow. It's time for us to come out of seclusion. Di Beichun turned to look at Bailey Hongzhuang beside him. They had been in seclusion for so long. If they still didn't come out, the palace masters and elders would be worried. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. It's time for me to return to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Bailey Hongzhuang still didn't know what the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall had planned for the competition of the 4 palaces. If she didn't go and find out today, she might not even know how the competition was going to be tomorrow. I also need to find the palace masters and elders to discuss this in the conference hall. Di Beichun smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun looked at each other, then walked out of the cultivation room together. Xiao He and Xiao Bai leaped onto Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulders, while Baishur followed beside Bailey Hongzhuang. In this year's time, Baishur's figure had become even more muscular than before. Walking beside Bailey Hongzhuang, he was like a majestic lion, very eye-catching. Once they left the bedroom, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly rushed to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Speaking of which, she could be considered as the least involved disciple in the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall. Ever since she had become a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, she rarely stayed in the Palace Hall and didn't know anything about the Palace Hall. As a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, she didn't even receive the cultivation resources that she was supposed to receive every month. After she had verified her strength at the ranking pillar, she had never gone back for another verification. Perhaps the current her had already become an existence at the bottom of the Vermilion Bird Palace's ranking pillar. After all, every disciple in the sect improved their strength very quickly. Although her ranking back then wasn't bad, after so long, the cultivation of the new disciples had already increased. Fortunately, with her current conditions, she didn't need to worry about how many cultivation resources she needed every month. This was the innate condition of being a proud son of heaven. In the past, she had climbed up step by step from the grassroots. But now, she was someone with a backer. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang rushed to the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. Junyu, could it be that Hongzhuang has cultivated so much that she doesn't even remember the date of the Battle of the 4 Palaces? Xia Jiqing anxiously paced back and forth. Today was the day to confirm the number of disciples participating in the competition between the 4 temples. Although there were many disciples participating in the competition between the 4 palaces, not every disciple could participate. There were many disciples in Tiangang sect. If every disciple were to participate, then who knew how long this battle of the four palaces would have to last? If Bailey Hongzhuang didn't appear today, then she wouldn't be able to participate in the battle of the four palaces tomorrow. Bai Junyu obviously didn't expect such a situation to occur. Hongzhuang shouldn't have gone out to cultivate, right? Should we go to the young sect master's bedroom to find her? The young sect master hasn't appeared for a long time. Maybe she isn't in the sect. Chapter 2207. Listening to Xia Jiqing's words, Bai Junyu's face also showed helplessness. Indeed, they were able to go to the young sect master's palace because Bailey Hongzhuang had led them. With their identity, it was impossible for them to set foot there. Even if Hongzhuang doesn't know, the young sect master should know. Bai Junyu couldn't understand. Such an important opportunity. Bailey Hongzhuang must not miss it. I think the palace master is also waiting for Hongzhuang. But if Hongzhuang doesn't appear, the palace master wants to give Hongzhuang a spot. I'm afraid it will only cause criticism. Xia Jiqing's face showed a strong sense of helplessness. Usually, Hongzhuang would not be like this. What was going on this time? When Bailey Hongzhuang arrived at the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall, she saw Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu anxiously waiting. Her face suddenly filled with a smile. Jiqing, Junyu, what are you doing here? Suddenly hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's voice, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were shocked. They only felt that this voice was like the sound of nature, and their eyes instantly turned to Bailey Hongzhuang. Hongzhuang, you're finally here. Xia Jiqing quickly trotted to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. Her delicate and beautiful face was full of anxiety. If you're a little later, I'm afraid there won't be a spot for the competition. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang was slightly stunned. What does this mean? Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang like this, Xia Jiqing knew that Bailey Hongzhuang had no idea what was going on. Today is the day to determine the spots for tomorrow's competition between the four palaces. Only 20 disciples of our Vermilion Bird Palace Hall can participate. Just getting a spot for the competition between the four palaces is not an easy thing. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang's face was filled with surprise. She only knew that tomorrow's battle of the four palaces was very important, but she didn't know that there was a quota for the participants today. Bewitching didn't tell her about this either. In fact, Bewitching could not be blamed for this. This was because the palace lords were usually the ones to choose the quotas for the competition of the four palaces. With Bailey Hongzhuang's status, no matter what, Qin AI would always leave a quota for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the battle of the four palaces this time was related to the battle of Zhuolu. Every disciple paid close attention to it. That was why there was such a thing as a selection. It was to make these disciples accept it wholeheartedly. Di Beichun did not participate in the previous battle of Zhuolu, so he naturally did not know about it. What's the situation now? What should I do? Bailey Hongzhuang asked quickly. She had been in seclusion for so long in order to get a quota for the battle of the four palaces. If she didn't even have the qualifications to participate, wouldn't she be speechless? Hongzhuang, it is said that this time all disciples above the 5th level of the Green Realm can go in for the assessment. You must have already reached that level, so you should go in quickly. Xia Jiqing said quickly. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that many disciples of the Vermilion Bird Palace Hall were waiting outside the stone room. Some of the disciples had entered the stone room for the assessment. Those who were not qualified to enter or had already finished the assessment were waiting outside. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Then I'll go in first. The next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly walked into the stone room. It was already late. If she didn't hurry up, she was afraid that she wouldn't have the opportunity to take the assessment. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.